Now, for an in-depth look at the exchange of words between North Korea and the United States, with the North imposed a deadline for outcome from the denuclearization talks looming ahead, we're joined via Skype by Harry Kazianis, Senior Director of Korean Studies at the Center for the National Interest in Washington. Hello there, Harry. Thanks for joining us.
Always a pleasure.
Now, in just over the space of several hours, North Korea appears to have been churning out messages to the United States of messages that the deadline is looming and that there's something that needs to be done before this deadline, or perhaps that this 2-year-long denuclearization talks are ending. What are you making out of those messages?
Well, I think what the North Koreans want is they want some indication that Donald Trump is going to give them some sort of big concessions when it comes to denuclearization and maybe a new relationship with Pyongyang. I think they've been very clear in stating what they want, which is sectoral sanctions relief. In other words, most likely sanctions removing coal and textile exports where they make billions of dollars to support their economy. And they also want some sort of security guarantee from the United States. Here's the problem. Donald Trump is under impeachment right now, and just by monitoring his Twitter over the last few days, months, forever time period you want to use, it's pretty clear that's what he's focused on, besides the tweets today on North Korea. Donald Trump right now has to focus on that more than anything else. He is not in any position to give any concessions to anyone in foreign policy or national security right now. So Kim Jong-un, I think, is making a very, very big mistake trying to demand these sort of concessions from the Trump administration. And in fact, if I was Kim Jong-un, he's probably thinking right now that he could wish he could pull back this deadline, because he knows that he is going to have to do something, because he's, made these big declaratory statements. I just hope it's not an ICBM or a nuclear test, because it would be red lines for this administration. And I think if that does happen, we are back to 2017 tensions.
So perhaps for once, North Korea is making miscalculations about how U.S. would behave to the North directives. Now, secondly, what about the United States? I mean, what is the sentiment there? What's President Trump thinking when he's tweeting these messages to North Korea saying that he will lose everything, North Korea will lose everything if they act in a hostile way, but then also highlighting his personal relationship with Kim Jong-un?
Well, this is what Donald Trump does. He always goes for the highs and the lows. The lows, obviously, is he is making a veiled threat of, I would say, military action. If that was Kim Jong-un, that's how I perceive it. But he's also trying to show Kim the benefits of negotiation. I think what the president is trying to telegraph here, and I actually had some discussions with very senior White House officials today, I have a feeling that what they're trying to telegraph in some way is that there is a potential deal here. But Kim Jong-un is going to have to show a little bit of patience and restraint when it comes to this deadline. Now, he does not have to test an ICBM or a nuclear weapon. He could test an intermediate range ballistic missile. He could launch a satellite. He could launch maybe more submarine launched ballistic missiles. He does not have to go to an ICBM or nuclear test. If he does those things, Donald Trump is going to be forced to respond. That doesn't mean military action, but we're looking at maximum pressure 2.0. We're looking at more sanctions. We're probably looking at more fiery rhetoric on Donald Trump's Twitter feed. So Kim does have a way out here, but Donald Trump is in no position right now to give any sort of concessions. But if Kim waits until after Donald Trump's Senate trial, which in all likelihood he is going to be acquitted on these charges, there is a chance of a deal, because Donald Trump is going to need a deal for his foreign policy credentials going into the 2020 election. At least that's what I would argue. So I think Kim would be rewarded for his patience. But if he foolishly launches an ICBM, all bets are off.
Now, number one, do you think what North Korea claimed to be a very important test on Saturday, do you think it could have been a solid fuel engine used for ICBMs? And number two, Donald Trump and President Moon Jae-in had a phone conversation regarding the peninsula issues. What do you think were discussed there? I mean, what could South Korea do to alleviate the tension between North Korea and the U.S. here?
Well, I think, number one, I do think it was a solid fuel ICBM engine. Now, it might just be a solid fuel engine. I mean, it doesn't necessarily have to go into an ICBM. One thing Kim could do is he could test an intermediate range ballistic missile and use solid fuel technology, basically to show the United States that its military capabilities are getting enhanced, but not necessarily go all the way to an ICBM, which would trigger that U.S. response. As for South Korea, what it can offer, I think the South Koreans, the best thing they can do right now is to use whatever backdoor channels they have with the North Koreans and say, look, there is a chance for diplomacy here. It's very slim, but if Kim can show restraint, if he can hold back on that ICBM I don't think a nuclear test would happen, but if that's being considered, those are the red lines. I think if the South Koreans are probably working with Pyongyang, whatever ways they possibly can, back channels or otherwise, to say, look, you cross that red line with the United States, there's not very much that we can do, and Donald Trump is going to have to respond. So really, at the end of the day, it's up to Kim Jong-un how this situation is going to play out.
Right, Harry, last but not least, what is your forecast of the North Korea-U.S. ties before the year's end, which is a deadline, self-proclaimed deadline by North Korea, and perhaps into the new year?
There's only two paths here, Jen. I think that path one is Kim shows restraint. He does something other than an ICBM or nuclear test. Donald Trump is able to get through a Senate trial. And I think Donald Trump would offer more concessions. That's my guess. If Kim Jong-un feels that he has to respond for some reason, feels like he's boxed in maybe because of what happened in Hanoi or whatever reason, feels like he has to carry out his new path or new way and tests an ICBM, we're back to 2017. And the challenge here, Jen, is we don't have an off-ramp like the Olympics. So I don't know what happens after that. I honestly would be very, very scared.
All right. Many thanks, as always, for your valuable insights, Harry. Harry Kazianis, a Senior Director for Korean Studies at the Center for the National Interest. Many thanks for your insights today.
Thanks for having me.